Metro 2035, Dmitry Glukhovsky, Chapter 21, Comrades. They took the bag off his head, and he looked. But even without looking, he'd already guessed from the voices where they'd brought him, to Tsvetnoy Boulevard Station, to the same place they'd taken him from. They'd dragged him all the way from the bunker with a sack over his head so that he couldn't find the way back. They unfastened the handcuffs, tugged the shapeless robe up over his head, and gave him a kick up the backside. Then the blue-finished revolver fell beside him with a clang. The first thing Artyom did was grab it. Empty. He turned round, but his escorts had already vanished into the crowd. He caught a brief glimpse of two gray human grains before they were buried under the rest of the gray sand. They'd flung him out of the bunker immediately, without wasting any time. Just as he was, still dressed in the waiter's outfit. The lady doctor only had time to stuff some kind of tablets or other into the pocket of his trousers with the razor-sharp creases. A kind soul. Then the sack went over his head. He sat down and thought for a while. People were copulating all around, giving it everything they got, because they had to live somehow. And now Artyom had to live somehow with all the things he had learned inside his frail plywood brain pan. The new knowledge pressed against the inside of the millimeter-thick walls. Artyom couldn't accept it. There couldn't be any reconciliation. It was impossible to believe that everything that was happening in the metro, the living hell, the dark hopelessness and senselessness, had really been arranged that way by someone, and that it all suited someone perfectly well. The appalling thing wasn't that people were mixed together with earth to fill in tunnels, but that without all this, the world couldn't carry on. It would collapse and crumble into the ground. It was impossible to understand a world arranged like that, and it was impossible to forgive it. He sat there, looking at somebody's bare, white backside, pumping away and arguing with it as if it was Besilov's face. He told it everything that he hadn't been quick-witted enough to tell Besilov. Of course, if you lie to people for so many years, how can they tell the truth from if you make them bend them down over a trough of swill all the time? But that doesn't mean they can't straighten up and look upwards, or at least forwards. Of course, that's the way you've arranged things. But that doesn't mean they can't do it themselves, or they don't want to. You say you ask them, and you stick the right answers down their throats. They ask. Arguing with the backside was easy. The backside didn't offer any objections. But what do people understand? You're the ones who should be obliterated. That bunker of yours, scattered. If the abscess isn't lanced, then nothing. You fat rats should be taken by the scruff of the neck and shown to the people. You try talking like that in front of people, about them, as if they were dumb cattle. And then we'll see. All of them in the bunker, they're stinking bastards. I'll scatter the lot of them. If they don't believe me, they'll believe you. I'll make you tell them everything. And if you don't, I'll blast you with this here gun. We're not the only ones who have backs to our heads. Bastards. He squeezed the handle of the empty nagant in his hand. He couldn't do something like this alone. Nothing could be done alone. He only had a small team, but he did have one. Letyaga, Homer, Lyoka. He could get them together. They already knew half the truth, and he could tell them the other half. Ask them. Together they could come up with a way to find that rat's nest and rip it open. How much time had gone by? A week? Or more? Everyone had probably wandered off throughout the metro, hunkered down in the cracks and crannies. One, so that Miller wouldn't find him. Another, so that Hansa wouldn't find him. But as for Homer, there wasn't any more Reich. Maybe Homer knew where to look for the others, and he knew where to look for Homer. He got up. He strode off, elbowing aside the men lined up for some lovey-doving with numbers on their hands, past the dried-off fascists, past the sluts of every possible caliber, past the frightened adolescents who had come to discover love, past the scorched stalkers who wanted at least to take a look, past the villains who had been raped by life and now needed to rape life through women, past all of them who were just beginning or already finishing their life of manhood in the underground world. Where was Sasha's cubbyhole here? He found it. He walked in without knocking, jumping the queue, smashed some trouserless fighting cock over the head with the butt of his nagant, dragged him off Sashenka, and dumped him in the corner. And after that, he said hello, turning away so that she could wrap herself up. "Where's Homer? You can't stay here, Artyom." She looked up at him. "Why have you come back? Where's the old man? He hasn't stopped pestering you, has he? Or has he? Where has he gone?" "They took him away. Please go." "They took him? Who took him?" "You. Did he help you? Alexei, did he help? You look different. Better. He helped me, you helped me. Thanks a fucking heap. To everyone. All my benefactors. You wanted to find out. Now you have, right? Or what did you want? Just to die?" "Yes, I'm sorry. I don't want anything from him. From them. It's a charity handout. I don't want it. I didn't. But now thanks anyway. Why did you leave them? It's a completely different life there, isn't it? You mean you've never been there? He hasn't taken you there? He promised. He's going to. But I asked him to take you instead of me for the time being. You haven't missed anything. Life's exactly the same down there, only with better chow. Well, and the medical treatment, too. You mean you could have gone there? With them? What did he tell you about?" "He told me about everything. Everything. The invisible observers, the powers that be, the Reds, the fascists, everything." "And he let you go?" "Yes. You have to go away. They picked up all your friends, that broker of yours, everybody, the same day that you... Maybe they're not alive any longer. I don't know." "Who? The observers?" "No, not his people. Your order." "The order? Listen, I'm trying to understand. He explained everything to you, right? You knew everything. About the surface, about the world, but that was your dream, wasn't it? To go back up there, just like it was mine, so that we could all... Up there, again, up there. You told me about it yourself. What are you doing here? Why are you hanging about in this cesspit? Why haven't you made your getaway? Why are you here?" Sasha stood there in front of him, as delicate as a pencil sketch, hugging herself. She gave him a sullen look. "Go away? Really?" He grabbed hold of her twig-thin wrists. "Tell me. I want to get the people to rise up. You asked me why I didn't stay there, because everyone else, us, all of us here, they have to know. All of them. They must know. You won't betray me again, to him? You won't give me away?" "I won't betray you." Her lips seemed to seal themselves after that. Artyom waited. "But I won't go with you." "Why?" "Artyom, I love him." "Who?" "Alexei." "Him, that old fart, that pervert, but he's got no soul. You should hear what he says about people. You love him." "Yes." Artyom released her arms from his scorched fingers and recoiled. "You can't!" "I love him." She shrugged her muffled shoulders. "He's like a magnet for me. He's a magnet, and I'm an iron filing, that's all. He's my master, and he has always been kind to me, from the very beginning. He loans you out to be used. You! He likes to watch when you and all kinds of filthy, all kinds." "Yes," Sasha nodded. "He enjoys that, and I like it too." "You like it? So what? Doesn't that suit you either? Like Homer? Then I'm sorry. And you're waiting for him to take you there? To join him? One place became free there. He got permission, but Okay, I get it. Instead of yourself, you sent me... I understand. Okay. You have to go. Do you really want to go there, to him? To that 24-hour drinking den? To the bunker? Instead of going up, going even deeper? I don't care where I go. I want to be with him. I'm his, and that's all. Okay, I understand. He stood there for a little longer. Then he took the cross off his neck and threw it to her. "See you, thanks. See you, Sirisk." He walked out. A topsy-turvy, tumbling world. He plodded through the lewd, ephemeral, drunken crowd. He'd told Sasha that he understood, but he hadn't understood a thing. How could she, with Besilov? How could she possibly love someone like that? How could she swap her airships, even for the dream of the bunker, or for the brothel, for the sake of brief, condescending bawdy house assignations? Besilov brought her his leftover scraps of food from the bunker, and his leftover scraps of love, too. But she didn't mind that. Both kinds of scraps were enough for her. She wasn't spoiled. What didn't Artyom really understand about Sasha? And could he even hate her? "Hey, waiter!" Someone reached out towards his lackey's outfit. "A liter of hooch!" "Go fuck yourself." He came out at the quayside. The water was high, right up to the brim. He had to smash it. Smash everything. Smash it all to fuck. So Miller had taken all his comrades from him. Homer, Lyoka, Letyaga. Artyom had to free them, if they were alive. He couldn't do anything alone. Miller. If he could just win the Order over onto his side. With a force like that, he could even go up against the observers. The Order had defended a bunker. It could storm one. But how could he stir them up? Tell them about the way their comrades had been sold? But it was Miller who sold them. And who to? He'd been bought and sold himself, the old idiot, and the boys had all simply been killed senselessly, because of an initiative at the middle management level. Did the old man himself realize what he had given his legs for? What if Artyom told him, explained? What did he know about the Metro Svyatoslav Konstantinovich, what Besilov had ladled out for him? He'd probably had half the truth stuffed down his throat, too. There was no way a hero could feel happy about changing into a roly-poly toy in a wheelchair, and not even in order to save the Metro, but because he hadn't been trusted with the second half of the truth. A plastic bottle raft was bobbing about at the far end of the platform, with a drunken railway man sound asleep beside it. Artyom looked round and gathered his thoughts. Sail through the flooded Reich. It couldn't be flooded right up to the ceiling, could it? And he'd be at Polis. Demand to talk to Miller. Tell Miller everything that he didn't know. Give him the rest of the truth. If Miller didn't come over to Artyom's side, at least he could let Artyom's people go. As he walked towards the raft, he picked up a pig-fat lamp in some whorehouse. Not a torch, but at least it would provide some sort of glimmer in the tunnel. He sneaked up to the raft and prodded the sleeping man with the toe of his lackey's shoe, like a log. He untied the flimsy vessel, jumped onto it, and set off into the pipe on the murky water. Instead of an oar, a ladle on a stick, row with it on one side, then on the other. The raft was swung round on the water. It was reluctant to go back, but it crept into the blackness anyway. The lamp only lit up one step ahead. Even the ladle reached further than that. The tunnel ran downwards and the water rose upwards. The ceiling sank lower, getting close to the top of Artyom's head. Would there be enough air? He couldn't row standing up any longer. The ceiling wouldn't let him, so he had to sit down. A rat swam towards him, delighted to see dry land. It clambered onto Artyom's raft and sat on the edge modestly. He didn't drive it away. He used to be afraid of rats, but he had gotten used to them a long time ago. Rats were just rats. Shit was just shit. Darkness was just darkness. A life like everyone else's, and he wouldn't even have noticed, just as no one else noticed, if he didn't know there could be a different kind of life. The lamp was the hanging kind. It tried to look not only forwards, but down, under the transparent hull. Something splashed down there. He thought about Sasha, saying goodbye to her. Why didn't Sasha want to tell people that they didn't have to stay stuck under the ground? Why was she here herself? What made her prefer Besilov? There was a stink of pig fat. The rat breathed with relish. A drowned man turned over under the raft and goggled at the lamp through the wall of bottles with his open eyes clogged with sand. He hadn't seen light for a long time and was trying to remember what it was. He clutched at the raft from below with his fat fingers, hindering its passage, then let it go. The ceiling moved even lower. Squatting down on his haunches, Artyom could reach the ribs of the ceiling with his hand now. The rat thought for a moment or two and leapt into the water. It swam towards Tsvetnoy Boulevard after all, to its own kind. Artyom stopped. He looked back. Everything was just as dark there. Even darker, in fact. He fumbled at his chest with one hand, but he had given the little cross back. Okay, he'd managed somehow. He asked without it and rowed on, and then the water started receding. Maybe he'd gotten past a hollow, a deep spot. The ceiling stopped pressing down on him and moved upwards, letting him breathe. Light glimmered up ahead. The light bulbs that had climbed right up under the ceiling were trying to blink on. Apparently the generators had been protected against the flood somehow. When he reached the station, the water turned really shallow. On the platform, it was only knee-deep. But the owners were in no hurry to come back home just yet. Those who hadn't escaped were bloating dejectedly at a loose end. There was an intense stench that Artyom could feel all over his face. The ground waters had washed out Darwin Station, and it had become Chekhov again. All of its cannibalistic trappings, the banners, the murals, the portraits, were floating belly up in the liquid mud. Never mind, they'd summon up their courage and put their house in order. They'd rebuild the menagerie. Dietrich would be there instead of Dietmar, but that was all. Yevgeny Petrovich would come back, one of the family, part of the system, even if he was a monster. Because everything had already been set up so gloriously and conveniently. This is where the little people climb in, and this is where the minced meat comes out. Like out at Balashika, like everywhere in the metro. And of course, someone would have to finish writing the history textbook for Yevgeny Petrovich. Ilya Stepanovich, probably. The teacher would have to carry the can alone, since Miller had gobbled up Homer. Never mind. Ilya Stepanovich would spell out everything the way it had to be. At Schiller, he'd have a heroic defense of the station against the Reds, and the freaks at the station wouldn't be defending but attacking. Yes, and then some kind of soulful, uplifting finale. About the Reich being flooded due to the nefarious scheming of enemies, but not broken, and a phoenix would rise from the ashes, better than the one before. How could Sasha sleep with this going on? He scattered a skin of sodden paper with his ladle. Looking closer, he saw it was blurred newspapers. On some, he could still read the word iron. On others, fist. The fragments of someone's days. They had a print shop somewhere here as well, didn't they? Dietmar hadn't been lying. He seriously intended to print 10,000 bricks of correct history. The station came to an end, and the tunnel started again. He'd thought through various ways of getting past the guard post and what lies to tell there. But he didn't get a chance for any lies. The men on watch weren't the scatterbrained polis guards, but the taciturn graven images of the Order. So they wouldn't shoot him. He shouted to tell them that he was Artyom on his way to see Miller. They approached him distrustfully, slapped the pockets of his jester's outfit, and seemed to recognize him, but didn't take off their own masks. They took the Nagant, then led him through the service corridors in order not to disconcert the air-headed local citizens. But they didn't take him to Miller. A door into some little box of a room, bars, guards. They led him in and shoved him viciously in the back like strangers. But inside there was joy, all alive. Lyoka, Letyaga, Homer, and even, for some reason, Ilya Stepanovich. They complimented Artyom on not having died, on looking much fresher, and on being dolled up so smartly. They laughed and hugged each other. He discovered that they had all been raked in back there at Tsvetnoy Boulevard. After all, it was only 2 stations from Polis, and one of the Order's soldiers had gone to shag the girls and recognized both Letyaga and Lyoka. They'd taken Homer and the worthless Ilya Stepanovich for good measure. They were having supper together and hadn't split in time. And you, where were you? Artyom paused, gathered his thoughts. He looked dubiously at Ilya Stepanovich, the Fuhrer's darling, and then he realized that this shouldn't be kept secret from anyone. Secrets were their weapon. But Artyom's was telling it like it is. He dumped it all on them, everything. The bunker, the tavern, the salads, the shots of vodka, the fat drunks in suits, the antibiotics, the wax Stalin, the inexhaustible electricity, the foreign bottles, and what lay behind them. The puppets on strings, the wars of fools, the slimy affection of the security services, the necessary famine, the necessary cannibalism, the necessary skirmishes in blind tunnels, the necessary and ever-present invisible observers. He told all of it to them, and himself. And he himself was surprised by the neat way everything lined up, how well it all seemed to knit together. There was nothing useless in this building of Besilov's, nothing inexplicable. All questions received an answer, apart from one, what for? In other words, while we chew on shit here, down there, they eat sawads? Lyoka wheezed in a sudden fit of hatred. Dwink fowain vodka? And the meat's probably a bit fresher than ours, eh? And they don't finish up their food. There are plates full of leftovers standing there. And down there, they were probably guzzling then too. Guzzling at the precise time when we were with all the others at Komsomol Station, facing the bullets. Bastards, said Lyoka. What bastards? And medical care, you say? Can't you see for yourself? Look, they put me back on my feet. I don't know for how long, but see what I mean? I see. But we have a different kind of medical care here, White. The kind where they grab a man by the balls and tell him, crawl to the graveyard yourself, man. We can't do anything to help you with your cancer anyway. That's the way we get tweeted, of all the wanton bastards. Homer stood there without saying anything. He couldn't believe something like this with the same eager speed as Lyoka. "But why do they tweet us white shit then?" the apostle asked. "If we in the shit, everyone should be in the shit. There shouldn't be some in it up their necks while others carve up their sawads with table knives. And where is this bunker? Maybe we should flood it, eh?" They put a bag over my head when we left, and I was unconscious on the way there. I don't know where it is. "But I've been there, in that museum," said Homer. "I was there before the war, on a guided tour. Its full name was the Tagansky PCS, Protected Command Center. Tagansky because it was right there on Taganskaya Square. There was one entrance from the street, the old Moscow side streets beside the Moscow River, old mansion houses, and one mansion with 2 stories. That's really a dummy. They explained to us at the time that behind the wall there was a concrete cap to protect the lift shaft against bombs. 20 stories down, and there was the bunker. And yes, it was all just as you describe it. The neon light, the restaurant, the refurbishment. But how do they get into the metro? There was an exit, not just one, to a station, Taganskaya in fact, and into a tunnel, to the Circle Line. Taganskaya station, but that's only 2 stations away from Komsomol, said Artyom. Only 2. Surely they must have heard the shouting and screaming. If we heard it even up on the surface? The invisible observers. Homer shook his head. It would be better if the Emerald City had turned out to be real. We can shake them out of there, Artyom said ardently. Force them out, drive them into the metro. Show these creeps to the people. Let them confess for themselves. Let Basilov confess that they've been lying for all these years. Let them say that there is a world on the surface, and we're just dying down here for nothing. Let them order their men to turn off the jammers. We really can pull the whole thing off. There aren't many guards there. We just have to work out how to get inside. But where did they get so much gwobfum? Lyoka asked. Depots, state storage facilities. But I think they take some from the metro, too. From Hansa. They've got Hansa in their pocket. They've got everyone in their pocket. The Reds drive their prisoners out to their construction sites. Hansa feeds them and the Order. It cleans up after them. Did you know about that, eh, Letyaga? No. He was looking past Artyom at the wall. And Miller? I don't think so. We have to tell him. You can tell him. You'll get your chance. Has he spoken to you? Have you seen him at all? Yes. There's going to be a court-martial. In other words, he'll decide for himself. And Anzor will sign on the dotted line. Desertion. Basically, for that, I should get... And Lyoka, too. He was sort of taken on as one of us, so he has to answer for it. And now you as well. You know what the penalty is. The max. Well, as for me, that wasn't what my mama had me for. Actually, she prophesied a great future, Lyoka informed them. But what about you? Artyom asked Homer. Why did they pick you up? I'm classified as a witness, Homer shrugged. What did I do? Miller doesn't even remember me. Maybe they'll let me go. A witness, Artyom repeated. Do you think he needs witnesses? I'm not exactly a deserter either. If we don't convince him, if he turns pig-headed, we're all done for. What about Ilya? Artyom turned round and looked at Ilya Stepanovich. He was sitting on the cold floor with his eyes fixed on Artyom. Their glances met, and he came to his senses. Is it all true? About the Reich? About Yevgeny Petrovich? About his daughter? There was an envelope with photographs. I held it in my own hands, and that's what Basilov said. I think it's true. He ran away. The Fuhrer. Ran away. I know. Now they're searching for him. Want to bring him back. They say they'll build a new Reich there, all of them together. I had a daughter, too, said Ilya Stepanovich, gulping with a dry throat. And they took her away, and you say he kept his daughter for himself. Artyom nodded. Ilya Stepanovich hid behind his knees in a shell. Can they really still be there? Said Homer. Right until now, the state authorities, and they run the whole metro? Yes, they do, but that's what makes them vulnerable. If we can smoke them out of there, arrest them, we can let everyone out at last, onto the surface. We can all go out, eh? Well, yes. We just have to convince Miller, explain to him how they pulled the wool over his eyes, too. They pondered for a while, each focused on his own thoughts, probably, feet scraped in the corridor. A tiny window at face height grated open. A figure appeared behind the wire grill. It wasn't tall enough. "Artyom!" He shuddered, walked over to the door, whispered, "Anya? Why did you come here? What have you come back for? He'll get rid of you. I have to get my guys out, and I want to see your father. One more time. The last time. Talk to him. He doesn't know everything. He'll change his mind. I just need to talk to him. Can you ask?" "I can't do anything. He doesn't listen to me anymore." "I need to explain to him. You tell him that, about the invisible observers. Listen, he's arranged a trial. Today. There'll be a Comrades court instead of a court-martial." "A Comrades court?" Letyaga asked with a start. "What does he want that circus for?" "Yes, what for?" Artyom asked. "I don't know," Anya said in a broken voice. "Because of me. He wants everyone to condemn you. All of you. So it's not just his personal decision." "Anechka, let him do it. A Comrades court is good. It's good everyone will be there. Let them listen. I'll tell all of them. Then we'll see who comes out on top. Don't worry. Thanks for telling me." "It won't do any good. More than half of them are from Hansa. They'll vote the way they're supposed to. Even if all of ours, they won't have enough votes. But we'll give it a try. Give it a try. Thank you for coming. I was wondering how I could get to talk to the boys. And now, here he himself. See, he's giving me a chance." "Hey, Anya," someone hissed in the corridor. "Cut it out." "Artyom." The little shutter slid shut. Anya disappeared. They took her away. "Listen, we can do this. Letyaga, do you hear me? If you back me up, it will all work out." "How?" "Veselov has to come for Sasha soon, to Tsvetnoy Boulevard. If we just have even a few fighting men, he always has only a couple of bodyguards with him. We'll take him, deliver him to the bunker, to Taganskaya station via Kitai Gorod, and the bunker itself has almost no defenses. If they open it, for Veselov, from the inside, you can't decide anything with just a couple of men. I thought about that. I sailed here through the Reich. The water level has already gone down. Chekhov is almost dry, and there are newspapers floating everywhere. Homer? Don't they have a print shop there, at Chekhov station?" "Yes, at Chekhov," said Homer, "in the service premises. And there's electricity there in some places. I saw it. Maybe the printing press didn't get flooded either. What if we print a leaflet instead of their little rag? Tell the people how they're being fooled. Tell them about the observers, about the jammers. What do you think? Can the two of us handle that, eh? When I was there, they showed it to us. To me. If we can get in there, we can use their whole system. We'll print a couple of 1,000 leaflets at least, and hand them out to people at Taganskaya station, and along the way too. Read this and pass it on to someone else. At Kitai Gorod, and right there in the leaflet, we'll tell them about the bunker. Take a crowd of people to the entrance. Veselov will open up for us, the bastard. He won't have any choice, and that's all. Let them tell the people the truth to their faces. Then we won't be alone, Letyaga. And even storming the place doesn't work immediately. The leaflets will spread round the metro anyway. Do we have to wet the people from Taganskaya station into the bunker? Lyoka asked. Awe of them. Wee-wee. The more the better. Let them take a look for themselves at the cushy life these greasy bastards have and always have had. When they see that, maybe they'll believe all the rest, eh? Right, Lyoka. Can we do it, Granddad? Theoretically, said Homer, if the paper survived. They stored it in plastic, actually, so it wouldn't get damp. It could have survived. Okay, Letyaga, what are our boys saying? Have they already forgotten everyone the Reds trampled in the dirt? What do you... Letyaga sighed. How could they forget? So we have a plan. I realize it's risky, but it could work, eh? It could, Lyoka admitted. Do you think they'll just allow us to hand out those leaflets? Homer asked, doubtfully. If things here are as you say, if the state hasn't disappeared, do you even have any idea what our state is like? No, and bollocks to it anyway, Granddad. We have to try. We just have to try. We have to tell people everything. We have to let them out. Homer nodded. And you? What are you going to do up on the surface? When we go out? He asked Artyom. Where, at least? Have you decided? Live, like before all this. We'll figure that out up there. Like people, isn't that clear? Not very, Homer sighed. Take me now. I don't know what I'll do. What difference does it make? Plant mushrooms if you like, even grain. I'm willing if it's up there. But first of all, there's a huge world up there. You can walk right round it. Find yourself a place, one after your own heart, a city, or the shore of an ocean. Why aren't you offended by the fact that a bunch of ghouls has decided for us that we'll never see all of this? And they sit there guzzling sawads wound the quack, Lyoka added. There has to be a reason, Letyaga reeled out again. There is a reason. Open spaces make them feel sick and dizzy, and they keep you with them like a domesticated animal. We'll knock them to hell out of that fucking bunker, the Apostle decided. Your plan's okay, just as long as they don't swing us up. Do you understand, brother? Artyom took hold of Letyaga's massive shoulder. Up there, you'll do more for people. What was that oath you swore about? Helping some red-bellied rats shoot at their own people? You swore to protect people. All of them. The Metro. If we lead them out onto the surface, then that's the place where they'll really need us. The people. Because we, the Order, have experience. We know how to do things. Up there. We understand the risks. We know the wild animals. All about the radiation level. Our place is up there. Not here, not slitting people's throats if they come here from somewhere else, but helping our people reach land that's alive. Well, agreed? Sure, okay. Agreed, Letyaga mumbled. Granddad? I don't know. I realize it's frightening for you to go up on the surface, after being stuck underground all these years. You understand everything down here. It's kind of dark and cramped, but it's your own place already, right? And going up on top is somehow... And you're not the only one. At Komsomol, I called for people to follow me. Not a single soul believed. No one went. You're not to blame. And they're not to blame either. Those bastards in the bunker are to blame. That's who. They lied to you. They lied to all of us. They taught us to be moles. They persuaded us that we're worms. But it's all lies, and it's built on lies. If we don't tell them the truth, you've got the skill. Right, Ilya Stepanik? He's got real talent. If you don't tell the truth about the dead bodies in the barrows, about the metal bars, about my tunnel, about the dogs' feeding pits, about the machine guns at Komsomol Station, who's going to tell them? No one. I know they won't believe it. Not immediately they won't. No one believed me? You still don't completely believe me. It's hard to believe something like that, but it has to be done. Let them point their fingers at us. Let them say we're fucking psychos. Let them think we're the enemy. Someone must tell them. Let them have their doubts. But what if someone does believe it? And someone follows us? We have to do it for the people, even if they'll be against it right now. They'll understand later. Or what will you do? Publish another fascist pamphlet? Ilya Stepanovich didn't even show his face from behind the shell of his knees, as if he had died. When the world shattered, a piece of shrapnel had hit him in the heart. Oh no! Homer shook his head. That's all over with. That's all then? If we get a chance, we'll do it? Are you all with me? Yes! Lyoka responded. We'll fuck the bourgeoisie! The time until the trial started coiling up into a spiral spring. The tighter it got, the slower it contracted. Artyom spoke to the jailers, demanding to see Miller, but they had black knitted wool faces. They didn't recognize Artyom, and Miller didn't want to remember Artyom either. Why was Svyatoslav Konstantinovich dragging his feet? What was he doing? Was he erecting the gallows in advance because he already knew how the Order would vote, because he had already discussed and pondered every soldier's vote with him? But Artyom prepared anyway. He strode round the cell, stepping on the other's feet, repeating to himself everything that he had to say. He would only have one chance. To save himself, to rescue Letyaga and Lyoka. To burn out the rat's nest and liberate the people from the rats. It's good that it's a Comrades court, he kept telling himself. That's the right thing. They're not stone idols. They're not made of clay or granite. Artyom might only have served 1 year with them, but that year was worth 7 others. They were all sewn tight to each other with a single red thread. Timur, Prince, Sam. Let Miller put up his gallows. It wasn't that easy to condemn your own brother to death. They arrived suddenly and called the prisoners out one by one. Letyaga! The big man hunched his bearish shoulders. He let them put the handcuffs on. How was he? While Artyom was talking to him, Letyaga seemed to be picking up his furious infection and started nodding along in time. But once Artyom fell silent, Letyaga's fever subsided and passed off. unable to maintain itself. Letyaga was one of those who decide once and for all, for the rest of their lives, what they'll think in this life and the view they'll take of every single subject in it. And he had decided firmly a long time ago. To his thick skin, the new truth wasn't even like shotgun pellets. It was like salt. Zvonarev. That turned out to be Lyoka. There you go. Miller had managed to find out more about him than Artyom had. He wondered if the others had been questioned. They cuffed Lyoka's hands, too. As they led him away, he looked back at Artyom. Tiomik, you mustn't foul things up. A sacred precept. Dark! Artyom's heart started racing. He'd thought he could breeze through it, but his heart was flustered and agitated anyway. That was plain stupid. A week ago, you weren't counting on lasting any longer than this week, were you? So now the time's up, right? No. Wrong. That wasn't going to happen. He couldn't croak now. Now was too soon. What was that you told me, Granddad? Everyone has his own end of the line? Homer raised his head. He gave a faint smile, weary and surprised. You remembered? I couldn't forget it. Let's have your hands, they barked. He held out his wrists. They ringed them. There can be lots of ends of the line, Homer corrected him, but each person has only one final destination. That's what you have to find, the destination. You don't think this is it? Artyom asked him, examining the handcuffs again. I don't think it's the end of the line yet, said Homer. Steely fingers squeezed Artyom's neck and bent him down closer to the floor, and they jerked his hands behind his back to make him peck better. Be seeing you, Artyom said to the old man. He ran through the corridors with his armed escorts, his eyes thrust down into the worn granite, with the escorts doing Artyom's looking and Artyom doing their thinking. There's never a bad moment for a sermon. Guys, I don't know if you're ours or from Hansa. You're being tricked. All of you. All of us. Do you know about the jammers? They're only there to keep us stuck in the metro. They stopped. A solid bone slid across his temple, and sticky tape cracked as it unrolled. They sealed off his mouth with a wide black strip, then stuck another one over it, crisscross style. And they dragged him on, just like that. Now he broke into a sweat. What if they didn't take it off? If they didn't let him say anything? They carried him out into a hall, into Arbat Station. The station was completely full of no one but men in black. Outsiders had been asked to disperse while the Order lynched its own. The men who had gathered here weren't wearing masks. Voting by roll call, Artyom guessed. Afterwards, every man would have to answer for his vote. They'd have to remember about it, if it was suddenly decided to pardon him. They pushed him into an empty circle of space. Lyoka and Letyaga were already there, both restrained, hands behind their backs and faces redecorated at the front. They must have wandered off course on the way here and been given directions. Letyaga saw the black cross where Artyom's mouth should be and started blinking his crossed eyes. Artyom jerked too. Take it off! He started looking round for Miller to demand justice from him. And Miller was soon rolled out by Ansor, but Miller didn't even see Artyom. For some reason, he kept looking in different directions. Artyom wriggled and squirmed like a tapeworm on a hot skillet with his glued-up mouth, biting at his rusty-tasting lips, so that maybe he could at least say everything through a little hole in them. But the tape was wide, and the glue had a grip of iron. They hadn't started yet. Finally, Homer and Ilya Stepanovich were pushed through the crowd. They weren't restrained. Witnesses. What testimony would they give? Artyom fixed his gaze on the burnt-out teacher. He had heard everything back there in the cell. What would he decide to tell? Had he been bought? Artyom recalled Dietmar with his simple and precise formula for winding people round his little finger. He recalled how he had slurped down swill to the repose of Dietmar's soul, remembering his premonition about Ilya Stepanovich. Again and again he tried to tear his lips apart, but everything was firmly stuck. His mouth had grown shut. We're ready, said Ansor. This is a hearing of a case of desertion and treason by 3 of our former comrades, Svyatoslav Konstantinovich hissed from his throne. Letyaga, Artyom, and a newly accepted member, Zvonarev. Acting by previous collusion, they sabotaged 2 highly important assignments, the goal of which was to halt a war between the Reds and the Reich. in our interest, and the interest of the entire metro. They obstructed the delivery of a dispatch with an ultimatum for the Führer, and then the operation to coerce Moskvin into peace. At the center of the collusion stands Artyom Dark. In our opinion, Letyaga simply fell under his influence. Regardless of circumstances, we demand the death penalty for Artyom. We are prepared to discuss Letyaga's case. The third accused is Artyom's hanger-on, a spy, basically. He should be liquidated, too. Are you Tadawi off your walker? What have I done? Or Artyom? Right. Is this one mentally incompetent? Restrain him. Someone kicked Lyokha from behind and shut his chipped teeth. But what's that on Artyom's mouth? Someone muttered in the crowd. How's he going to speak for himself? There are grounds for believing that he has lost his mind, Miller replied reluctantly. Don't worry. His turn will come. We'll hear him out. You'll be convinced for yourselves. Everything is clear to me as it is, but we decide fair and square, with open and general voting. We'll start with Letyaga. Then we have the witnesses. We'll vote on Letyaga. Then on the subnormal one. Then Artyom. I wish to say specifically that this is not some kind of slapstick show. You must give me your answer with all due severity. A former relative, that's not important. The man betrayed us. The law applies to everyone. I especially brought him before a Comrades court so that afterwards there wouldn't be any doubts. Is that clear? The crowd started buzzing, but it only managed to buzz in chorus, only as a team drawn up in ranks. Right, Letyaga. Tell us the facts. When Artyom Dark made his first attempt to recruit you and what he said, how he made you hand over the secret dispatch, and the details of how he disrupted the negotiations with Moskvin. The men can know. We have no secrets here. And in whose interest Dark was acting. Miller's face was as calm as a paralytic's. But with his one live arm, he had clutched the rim of his chair's wheels so hard that the fingers were white. He looked at Letyaga with eyes of bronze, and his pupils were holes hollowed out in the bronze. Letyaga stepped forward like a bear on a chain. He moved his head about and squinted guiltily at Artyom. He breathed out noisily, expelling surplus air, looked down at the granite. The crowd was silent. Artyom couldn't part his lips. Lyokha was chewing on bloody jelly. We watched Artyom for a long time, Letyaga began. All last year, we knew that he went up onto the surface several times a week. He walked out of the exhibition of economic achievement station and went to the Tricolor high-rises out along the Yaroslavl highway. We had a position fitted out opposite them. We watched. Several times a week he tried to make contact by radio. Letyaga was selling him out. As Artyom listened, he jabbed his tongue against the bitter glue and bleated through his nostrils. The helplessness pressed down on him heavily, like cold, sharp-edged crushed stone, like damp, freshly chopped soil, weighing down on his legs, on his arms, on his chest. Artyom's comrades were here. Sam, Stiopa, Timur, Prince. He thought he glimpsed Anya squeezed in behind the men's shoulders. He looked closer. Was it really her? He lost her. You know, Letyaga said, that the war with the West isn't over, that they're just waiting for us to give ourselves away. Of course, we immediately suspected that Artyom was trying to get in contact with someone there, to unmask us, perhaps even to direct attacks against us. He was a new man. And the colonel said, watch him. Regardless of, well, in a nutshell, and this other business with the radio center. You've already heard about it, probably. The men started rustling. Anya! Anya appeared. She tore herself out of someone's clawed hand and squeezed through into the front row. She fixed her eyes on Artyom and held him in their grip. You're wandering, Miller said severely. First, tell about the dispatch. Yes, well, it's like this. Basically, everything was more or less clear about Artyom, that he was probably working for the enemy, with the goal of destabilizing the situation, exposing Moscow, directing their fire, and with the dispatch. Artyom jerked and squirmed, but he was held firmly, and there wasn't even a tiny little hole in his mouth for him to say something to Letyaga about a minus. And anyway, Letyaga had already repaid that debt, and Artyom had borrowed a load of blood from Veselov. But what for? So he could hobble to the noose on his own? Letyaga didn't want to see him anymore. He was already speaking clearly and concisely, as if he was playing on a disc. In the crowd, occasional men whom Artyom knew were already squinting at him as if he was a stranger, some kind of poisonous creature that should be crushed. "And what happened with Moskvin?" Miller asked. "With Moskvin?" Letyaga repeated after him. "The story with Moskvin was this. Artyom dragged me out of the bunker when we were stuck in there fighting Korbut and his specials. When we buried number 10, Android, Ulman, Red, and Tonchik." "I remember all of them," Miller interrupted. "Don't go on." "Yes, you remember all of them. You've got that list. We've all seen it, and I almost croaked there. And Artyom said to me, 'Do you realize that we just brought cartridges, 20,000 cartridges, to the Reds? To Moskvin, that we brought them to the bastards who killed our boys, on Miller's orders?' I realized that we'd sold their memory. I realized what they died for nothing, that it was politics. Letyaga, that politics is more important. That's its war yesterday, peace today. It's too bad the boys all croaked for nothing yesterday when there was war, because today there's peace. Today we'll load those scumbags' guns with 20,000 cartridges, so tomorrow they can mow down the rest of our boys with them when there's a war again. That's enough." And then Artyom said there aren't any Reds or fascists at all, and there isn't any order. There's only this sort of structure, the invisible observers, or fuck knows who. It makes no difference. And we're one section of this structure, and the Reds are another. And it wasn't a genuine war, and the defense of the bunker was a load of crap. It's all a show. And what I wonder is, maybe drinking vodka with our dead boys is all a show too? "Letyaga! Let him speak!" someone shouted from the crowd. "Let him have the floor. Letyaga's our man, one of us. Don't shut his mouth." "Let him go. What's the problem?" "Right, Letyaga has finished. And by the way, both my legs..." And Artyom said, "So where was Hansa in the bunker then? Why did they only help us out with men afterwards and not when we asked them? And is that what he traded his legs for?" "Letyaga for commander," someone roared. And then there was a raid click from somewhere, and Letyaga sprayed a red stain onto the beautiful white wall behind him. He spurted red, went limp, sat down, and stretched out face down on the floor. The back of his head had disappeared, and a crater of flesh had opened up in its place, and one exactly like it immediately opened up somewhere in Artyom's soul. "Letyaga! Letyaga! This is Hansa! Smash Hansa!" Someone flying by swept Miller out of his armchair. He fell on the granite not far from the thick puddle and started twitching his arm like a cockroach turned over on its back, trying to get up. The wheels spun and the spokes flashed, but men were already clashing above him, indistinguishable from each other, but everyone knowing for certain who was against him and who was with him. They grabbed Artyom, dragged him away, tore off the tape, and let him speak, shielding him with their chests. They dragged out Lyoka, and Artyom dragged out Homer. Now they were in a circle of friends. The men were fighting brutally with bare hands. No one was allowed to bring weapons into the court, apart from the escorts and executioners. "A chance! A chance!" Artyom yelled into Lyoka's ear as they were unlocking Lyoka's bracelets with the keys grabbed from the escorts. "We take the men to Tsvetnoy and Homer, to the Reich, to the print shop. We'll do everything according to plan." "Yes, sir! Yes, sir!" Lyoka yelled. The two waves that had clashed started separating, moving apart from the line of schism. One took dead Letyaga with it, the other took Miller, twisting his arm about, and the invalid chair with the bent wheels. But Artyom couldn't run off with all the others yet. He darted out of the crowd and started looking round. Where was she? "Hey, he!" someone bawled to him from that direction. They showed her to him, grabbed by the hair with her shirt torn. "Anya! Where's the ringleader? Give us Dark! We've got his wife! Anya, come over here, creep, or we'll rip her foul mouth. We'll let everyone here shag the bitch. Got that? Crawl over here to us, you shit! Don't you dare!" Anya was jerking about and cursing them. One bruised eye was already turning black. The brown nipple of one breast protruded in pitiful defiance. Artyom caught hold of Homer's hand. "Leaflets! About the jammers! About the survivors! About the observers! About how we're all being duped! The truth, Granddad." Homer nodded. "Lyoka! You know him, you know his face! Besilov! Sasha's fancy man, there's no one but you! Take some men from here, to Tsvetnoy! Get that rat to... That's enough, Dark! Either he lets you in, or you waste him there and then. Don't touch her, you motherfuckers!" Lyoka blinked. "That's it! Artyom shouted to the men. "That's it! I'm coming! I'm coming to you! Let her go! Well?" He and Anya met for half a second between two opposed poles of black, met and parted.